everyone, and welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room and What's on the Shelf Wednesday. In this series, I'll be doing quick reviews of whiskeys that you could actually find on the shelf, including bourbons, rye, Irish whiskeys, and Scotch. So what's on the shelf today? Woodford Reserve Double Oaked Bourbon. Despite their popularity and availability, Woodford Reserve is one of Kentucky's oldest and smallest distilleries, but what it lacks in size, it actually makes up for in history. Woodford Reserve sits on Kentucky's oldest distilling site where Elijah Pepper began crafting whiskey way back in 1812. Now, that same site where years later, master distiller James Christopher Crowe, or James C. Crowe, perfected his whiskey making methods, which today have become common practice, including the implementation of sour mash into fermentation. The cool thing about Woodford Reserve, they use 3 signature copper pot stills. You see them on their logos. If you buy a barrelhead, when you go to the actual distillery, they have a lot of their t-shirts have the 3 iconic copper pot stills. Actually, when you see them in person, they're really cool. They use 100-year-old cypress wood fermenters and one of the only heat-cycled barrel houses in the world. Since they are owned by Brown-Forman, they blend Old Forester column still distillate with their copper pot still distillate to create their signature flavor. And that brings us to today's review for Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. This was released in February 2012, more than 15 years after the release of the standard Woodford Reserve Distiller Select. Woodford Double Oaked is made by a rebarreling of Woodford Reserve Distiller Select in a second virgin charred oak barrel for a little under a year. Now that second barrel used is deeply toasted before also being lightly charred. This is a non-age stated, has a mash bill of 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley. It's bottled at their signature 90.4 proof and has an MSRP around $50. So the reason why I wanted to explore Woodford Double Oaked, because I think this is one of those forgotten bottles that sit on the shelf. Being myself and a lot of other bourbon enthusiasts really go for higher proof stuff, but at 90.4 proof, the way they do the toasting and then charring, leaving it in for a barrel for almost a full year, it really gives a unique and delicious flavor profile. So let's get into the nose. Marshmallows, toasted marshmallows right off the bat. A lot of sweet oak. You really get that toasted flavor profile that comes through. Chocolate, definitely some sweet almonds in there. Dare I say marzipan? Man, lots of caramel here. This literally smells like a freshly opened Snickers bar. Chocolate, nougat, nuts. What the hell is nougat anyway? I don't know. But yeah, I smell it in here. That toasted marshmallow note is really coming through though. There's some dark fruits in here too that are starting to pop up. A little bit of cherry, like chocolate covered raisins, or you ever open up a fresh pack of Sun-Made raisins, the box, that waxy raisiny character that jumps out. Just really great on the nose. All right, let's go for a sip. Here we go. Man, first thing you get is that sweet toasted oak, a lot of vanilla. I think what they did with the second barreling, that toasting and the charring, you really taste that sweet oak flavor comes through. Now, Brown-Forman has their own cooperage, which allows them to do really cool stuff with barrels. If you look at the 1910 release from Old Forester, the Old Fine Whiskey, with that second finishing process where they charred the barrel so much to the point of almost breaking to get all those deep sugars, it really does a world of difference when you do some different things with the barrels, and I love tasting stuff like that. So let's go for another sip. So second sip, more vanilla, more chocolate, but now some of those dark fruits are starting to come forward now. Cherry, raisin. Yeah, I'm getting like a dark chocolate, like a blueberry note, like mixed with dark chocolate on there too. That's kind of interesting. But still getting the toasted marshmallow note too. That's kind of mixed in there. Just really great sweet flavors. This is turning into one of those dessert bourbons, which, you know, there's not a ton out there, but this one I would probably put in that tier. Let's go for another sip. So the palate is staying pretty consistent. Now I'm getting a little bit more of a cherry characteristic here. It's becoming a little bit more cherry forward. That chocolate note is still there with that marshmallow. But on the finish, I think my favorite note just popped up on the finish, and that's butterscotch. I got a nice butterscotch right on the very end. Kind of coincides with that sweet oak profile. Definitely chocolate. It's really sweet. It's really desserty. Let's go for one last sip here. Cheers. Those flavors are staying consistent too. It's really nice. You get all the sweet oak, the vanilla, the cherry, and I think the dark fruits start becoming stronger the more you sip on it. Now it's only 90.4 proof, so the finish isn't really gonna go super long on this, but I think what it lacks in length actually makes up for it in flavor. You know, this was always an interesting bottle because even though it's only 90.4 proof, I think the flavor in here would make you think it's a higher proof, especially with all the caramel, the butterscotch, a little bit of an apple note too on the back end. I mean, there's probably no more of a perfect dessert bourbon or a good just easy sipper with a lot of sweet flavors than Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. Now it is $50, but it is on the shelf, so you could pretty much find this stuff anywhere, which is pretty cool. Actually, I have a quick idea. So a quick comparison, guys. I want to compare it to the Old Forester 1910, the Old Fine Whiskey, which I mentioned earlier. This, again, has another second barrel finishing technique, but this one is also, to me, kind of a desserty type of bourbon. So I wanted to compare the two and see what the differences are. This is pretty much available everywhere. Old Fine Whiskey 1910 was really popular at first. It's a little bit harder to find, but it's becoming more available. So let's do a quick comparison here. So the biggest difference I get from the 1910 is more of a bitter chocolate note. This is milk chocolate, marshmallow, nuttiness. The Old Fine Whiskey, the 1910 on the nose, I'm getting more of a bitter chocolate, almost a coffee flavor too. Man, both of these are so sweet. I'm getting a little bit of that toasted marshmallow profile on the Old Fine Whiskey as well. But I'm also getting a lot more of a charred oak wood character here. It's not as sweet like I'm getting here on the Woodford Double Oaked, but this one also is bringing that coffee note to it to go along with that chocolate. Let's go for a quick sip of the 1910. Again, such sweet flavors from that second barreling. It's the coffee still there. You are getting a good amount of chocolate. That Old Forester signature cherry note is still there a little bit, kind of mixed in. What I think you're getting in here is more of an oak influence. There's a lot of sweet oak flavor. Really pulls in a lot of those deep layers of the wood into the whiskey here. But I think the biggest difference is that bitter type coffee note that you get in this bottle when you compare it to all the sweetness candy that you get in the Woodford Reserve. Let's go for a sip of this real quick. Yeah, the Woodford Reserve just seems, you know, the Woodford Reserve is surprisingly creamier to me on the palate, the Double Oaked. Even though it's a lesser proof, it just feels creamier. And that could be due to the copper pot stills. Copper pot stills are known to give whiskey or bourbons a little bit more of a bite, and I think it's doing that here a little bit more of a creaminess to it. Whereas the 93 proof Old Fine Whiskey, even though it's a little bit higher of a proof, it's coming through not as viscous, but has great flavor too. The 93 proof Old Fine Whiskey, I could tell you, as it opens up, gets a little bit more sweeter, definitely more coffee, chocolate come out. While the Woodford Reserve, I think that it really stays consistent all the way through. Get all those sweet flavors, the toasted marshmallow, the chocolate, the Snickers bar accent to it. Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, I think, is a great option if you can't find the 1910, but both are delicious, and the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked you can find on the shelf. All right, everybody, well, thank you for watching this episode of What's on the Shelf Wednesday featuring Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. Love talking with you guys. I will see you next week for What's on the Shelf Wednesday, and as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on The Mash and Drum. Take care.